The next family member I'd like to introduce is someone who I met at an anti-torture event, Judson Church in New York City. Just so happened that she asked a question of the panel that day, and she mentioned that she was a 9/11 family member. And after the question and answer session, I went over to her and we spoke. And it just so happened that her nephew, the brother of Adam, who was the victim on September 11th, her other nephew, the brother of that nephew, Don Arias, I actually worked with in the Air Force for a time. So we had a unique connection there, and we had some very interesting conversations. And I'm so eternally grateful for such a wonderful lady to be a part of my life now, because I learn from everybody. I learn from especially the family members, because we can relate, and especially the family members that are in the know about the cover-up and the omissions and the distortions, because we're still a bit traumatized by the fact that we lost loved ones and we've been viciously lied to, and there's still no justice. And Valerie is someone who's fighting for that justice. Valerie Lucznikowska was head of her own public relations firm, specializing in internal finance and economics. More recently, was a founder and the executive director of a nonprofit of international architects dedicated to excellence in architectural principles. She has a master's degree in politics of the world economy from the London School of Economics and Political Science. Since losing her nephew, Adam, in the World Trade Center on 9/11, she became acutely aware that by far the largest number of lives claimed by modern wars are civilians, leaving lasting damage to societies and leaving behind increasing numbers of family members around the world to cope with grief, anger, and long-term psychological scars. Since 2002, she has been a member of the only 9/11 family group dedicated to peace, and has been speaking in person and to the media here and abroad, and lobbying Congress on civil liberties, Iraq, closing Guantanamo, and releasing or bringing the detainees to trial in federal courts. She is also an advisor to the board of Park 51, the Muslim Community Center and Prayer Room near Ground Zero. Everyone, Valerie.
I first of all want to make it totally clear. Some of you may have seen my face before because I've done a lot of work with the organization that Manny alluded to, the September 11th Families for Peaceful Tomorrows. I'd like to assure you that I am not here on behalf of that group. I am here as an individual only. Okay, got that out of the way. I also want to thank Jane, who reminded me of some of the journey that I've been through. She reminded me about how I could not believe that my government could do certain things like attack the people of Iraq. I was just incredulous at this, and I went through a life-changing experience when that actually did happen. In fact, I was in Italy at that time. I was on a speaking tour of Italy, invited by a peace group there. Tavolo della Pace is the name of it. And I was going from, I think I did about 10 towns in 10 cities in 7 days. And I spoke at many city councils who wanted to pass resolutions against the war in Iraq. And we managed to get that done in most of the cases. But that last night, before it was on the weekend, I was speaking at a monastery in, I think it was, trying to remember, I can't even remember, it was in Siena. There were so many cities that I went to so quickly. And I was on a balcony with a Muslim woman. She and I both spoke. and there were a couple of monks on either side of us, and there was a large crowd in the plaza below. And I stated unequivocally that the next day, when there was to be an announcement from my government, I stated that my government could never do this. We could never go to war. And the next day, Bush declared war. And I went through, it was the worst kind of hell since a couple of days after 9/11, when it was one of my last trips to a victim center in Manhattan where I live. I'm the only member of my family who lives in Manhattan. And on that last trip, which was 1 o'clock in the morning on Thursday after September 11th, I was still looking for the Red Cross lists of the people who were, well, at that point, no one was coming in injured anymore. It was only bodies. And the last list that came in that I lunged for was a list of body parts. I felt I was sinking through the floor. There was no hope. And I felt that way again when war was declared in Iraq. So many families like mine, like Jane's, like Manny's, like so many others, so many families left broken, scarred, angry, horribly angry, grief-stricken, so many of them all over the world. That was first what polarized me when I saw just a couple of months after 9/11 that we were invading Iraq. At first I thought, oh, we've got to retaliate. Of course we have to retaliate. And then I read in the paper how many casualties. And I know, I started, again, thank God for the computer, I started looking up on my computer. And I saw over the course of the 20th century, the percentage of casualties in wars from the beginning of that century right through to this century has gone from very, very low to something like 90%. War is no longer for armies. War is against the civilian population. We cannot allow this to happen. We all have to be involved. Even through just questioning actions. And that's what this is. This is a question. Building what? And what happened there? That's what I want to know. The Jersey girls were the ones to question our government and demand that they were demanding answers. I'm now at the point where I see people asking questions who were put down for asking questions. Is this my country? Is this the country that I was raised in? Certainly not. So it all comes down to who are we as Americans? I'm a first-generation American. I know what that's like. I was raised in the Polish-Ukrainian ghetto on the Lower East Side of New York. I had such advantages. I got into Hunter College High School, one of the best high schools in the country. No money, not a cent. Nobody had to pay a cent. Sure, I was ashamed of the clothing I was wearing, but I still got the education. And that changed my life. Now, what and who are we? We have got to at least be able to ask questions. We have to fight for the right to ask questions now. That's a horrible thing. No, we need answers. But let's start with the questions. And I'd like each one of you, I'd like to reiterate what Manny said. We need, if you can just give, never mind $250, give us $5 here for this effort to raise the question so that maybe someday we'll get an answer.